Hello students, this is Swarnalatha. I am working as assistant professor in BVRIT Engineering College, Narsapur. Today I am going to explain about statistical methods and the topics covered in this paper. So before going to this, I am going to explain about what is statistics, and we should know what is that statistics and what is the importance of studying of this paper. Nowadays, as we know, handling data is the big task. In 1 second, we may get some million bits of data. So how can we manage the data? And we need to analyze the data. Suppose when we do any survey or any project, first we need to collect the data, isn't it? So regarding our requirements, we are collecting the data. After collecting the data, we are segregating the data into present the data in proper manner. So that is nothing but whenever non-mathematics students also easily can understand when we data arrange in table pattern, so that that they can easily understand. The presentation of data is very important. So after presenting the data, whatever the requirement we need regarding of the data, we are applying some statistical methods. So when we apply the statistical methods, that is nothing but analyzation of the data. So in analysis point of view, we are using statistical tools. After analyzation, we get some result. So based on that result, we interpret our conclusions, whether the data is going to be accepted or rejected. So that type of interpretation we can give through all this process. Statistics is nothing but collecting data and presentation of the data and analyzation and interpretation of the data. Combining all these four functions is nothing but statistics. So in this statistic, we are applying different types of methods for analyzing of the data. So for managing of the big data, nowadays this statistics plays very important role. So that is why this plays very vital role in our real life aspects. Okay, coming to our paper. So in the statistical methods, it covered 5 units. Unit 1, it contains sampling techniques. That sampling techniques contains random sampling and sampling from finite and infinite populations, estimation and standard error, sampling distribution of mean, and stratified random sampling. What is that sample? So when we have large data, so can we assume that it has the population? So population is nothing but collecting all objects, the set of all individuals or group of individuals, we call it as population. So in that, when we take some part of that population, so that part we call it as sample. Suppose when we cook a rice in big vessel, how can we check whether that rice is cooked or not? We took some grains from that bowl, and based on that we can decide whether it is cooked or not, isn't it? Like that, whatever that grains we have taken, so that some of that grains we call it as sample. Okay, so whatever that part we took from that bowl, so that we should consider from the middle of that bowl, isn't it? Meaning of that is, whatever that sample we are going to select, that should be proper. If sample is proper, the result, whatever that result we get, that we can give best output to that population, isn't it? So how do we select that sample, and what are the methods of selecting of that sample, and what type of methods are implementing for selecting of that good sample, proper sample? So that covers in this unit 1. Okay, and in this sampling methods, most important frequently used methods are simple random sampling and stratified random sampling. Simple random sampling. So sample we may select in 2 types, random sample and non-random sample. So random sample is nothing but random. So the meaning itself, it shows random means whatever that observation that are not in systematic way. Okay, so whenever that observations are in systematic way, so that is systematic pattern. So if that observations are not in systematic way, that is the random pattern. Okay, so when we select that sample random manner, that is called it as the random sample. So examples of these methods are lottery system and random tables. That random tables are available in statistical format. Okay, so based on that we may get that random samples. So after selecting, why we choose that random sample? Because in that random sample, each and every unit having the equal chance of probability, means there is no partiality. So that partiality in statistical language we call it as no biasness. Partiality means biased. So when we select the object without biasness, that is called as the unbiasedness. So each and every unit having equal chance. So that type of sample is called as the random sample. And coming to that stratified random sample. So stratified meaning of that is, whenever we have that large population, we need to segregate that into some parts, and that parts we call it as stratum, and in each stratum, for selecting of that sample, we are applying the simple random sampling technique. So the way of selecting of that sample is called it as the stratified random sampling. So using of these methods, we are selecting the sample from the population, and whatever that sample drawn from that population, how do we calculate that sample mean, and how do we get that sampling distribution, standard errors, that we covered in this first unit. So that is the sampling technique. And second unit, it covers the linear statistical models. So in this, it explains about the scatter diagram. It includes scatter diagram, simple linear regression and correlation, multiple regression and multiple correlation, analysis of variance, one way, two way. So here scatter diagram, nothing but whenever whenever our data includes two types of variables, so that is called it as bivariate data. So the diagrammatic representation of that bivariate data is called it as scatter diagram. So whenever we should know about the relation between that two variables, nothing but the linear relationship between the two variables is called it as correlation. And based on that one variable, suppose whatever the two variables we need to check, in that we assume one is independent variable, one is dependent variable. So the relation between that dependent variable and independent variable explain about the concept of regression. And whenever the dependent variable, it may include more than two independent variables, that is called it as the multiple regression. And based on this, we need to check more than independent variables relation and measurement of those independent variables. We are using ANOVA concept. ANOVA is nothing but analysis of variance. So if the effect of one variable measurement we may calculate it based on that independent variables, and we are going to estimate the dependent variable, that is called it as ANOVA one way. If the effect, the dependent variable, it may be affected by the two independent variables, and the measurement of those two independent variables we can measure by using of that ANOVA two-way classification. So how can we measure, what types of formula we are using by measuring of this variables relation? So that it covers in this second unit. And unit 3, estimation. So here covers point estimation, criteria for good estimates, and this estimation including maximum likelihood estimation, sufficient statistic, and concept of examples, complete sufficiency, and their applications in estimation. So here, what is the meaning of estimation? After selecting the sample, why we are choosing that sample? We need to, using of that big data, directly we cannot measure the nature of that big data, isn't it? So for measuring of that population or big data point of view, we are selecting some sample. So now whatever that sample we have chosen, applying some sampling techniques or statistical methods on those sample observations, through that we can get that proper measurement. measurements, isn't it? So here, after selecting that sample, whether whatever that operations we are implementing on that sample, so that is called it as estimator. Okay, so the function of sample observations is called it as estimator. Through that estimator, we can estimate the population value. Means we are going to give the approximate value to that population. So whenever we select that proper sample, whatever that measurement we are going to give, that is nearer to the true value of the parameter, means true value of that population, isn't it? So for selecting of that estimator, first whatever that sample estimator we have selected, that is good or not, first we should know that, isn't it? For knowing of that, it should be satisfied the good estimator property. Good estimator means it has contains 4 properties: unbiasedness, consistency, sufficiency, efficiency. So any estimator satisfied these 4 properties, that estimator we call it as good estimator. So after selecting the sample, we are now selecting that good estimator through these properties. Through that good estimator, we are going to estimate the population. So after selecting that estimator, we need to measure the value of the sample. Through that sample, we can give the result of the population, isn't it? So for measuring of that estimator value, we are using some estimation methods. So frequently we are using maximum likelihood method for estimation point of view. So those topics and how do we can estimate through that estimator, that covers in this estimation topic in unit 3. And unit 4, test of hypothesis and non-parametric inference. So whenever we have estimated that value, now coming to the point, we need to know whether it is going to be accepted or rejected. So this is the decision time. So whenever we take the decision based on our data, so we need to apply this test of hypothesis. Okay, so here how in the test of hypothesis, parametric tests are involved. So parametric test means whatever that object we are going to calculate, so that whatever that constant value we are going to calculate related to that population, that is called it as parameter. So in the same way, whatever that constant value related to that sample, that is called it as statistic. So through that statistic, we are going to we are applying some estimation methods and we are going to measure that parameter value. So all that part comes under this parametric inference. So through this inference and applying the testing of hypothesis procedure, we are going to give whether it is going to be accepted or rejected. That type of conclusion we may give based on this test of hypothesis concept. And coming to the non-parametric inference. So non-parametric, so the name itself it indicates non-parametric means it does not contain parameters, means it does not include any distributions and any parameter, any constant values. Okay, so whenever we need to handle that nominal type of data and ordinal type of data, in that case we are using non-parametric inference. What is nominal, what is ordinal? So ordinal is nothing but whenever the data it contains, it is in the form of ranking manner, so that type of data we call it as ordinal. And nominal means some characteristic type of data, means in application form generally we mostly seen in the name, region, religion, so that type of characteristics, that is called as nominal type of data. So whenever the data includes in that type of series of data, in that case we are using non-parametric inference. Those non-parametric tests are sign test, Wilcoxon, Mann-Whitney U test, and Kendall's Smino test, test, Spearman's and Kendall's test, tolerance region. So all these comes under this non-parametric inference. And coming to our fifth unit is nothing but basics of time series analysis and forecasting. So here, time series is nothing but whenever the data can be arranged with respect to the time, means the arrangement of data in chronological order, it is called it as time series. So in the time series, using of that these stationary ARIMA models and all these identification and estimation of this ARIMA, all these techniques are using for forecasting or prediction point of view. We are using these methods. So using of the time series, we can predict the future values. So based on the past data, how can we estimate that future values in that regarding to that time period. So that concept includes in this fifth unit. So these are the topics covered in this paper. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.